Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
When you suggested we look into Bob Ross, I I wasn't sure what to expect.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the memes.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the happy little trees guy.
Exactly.
But you send over these two Bob Ross biographies,
Uh-huh.
and I gotta say, I was surprised by how much I didn't know
Oh, yeah.
about him.
There's definitely more to.
Like, I had no idea how
I mean,
complex
so, yeah, for sure.
his life really was.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we're gonna dive deep
Okay.
into these sources and try to figure out who the man behind the perm and the soothing voice really was.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, everybody knows the image,
Right?
but nobody really knows his story.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting is how a lot of his personal experiences really shaped his art, like his time in the military
Oh, yeah.
and later on in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Big influences.
okay, let's unpack that a little bit. I mean, the
Yeah.
image that we all have in our head is Bob Ross,
Right.
the gentle painter,
A happy little accident.
happy accidents.
Right.
But get this,
Mhm.
before he was the king of chill,
Yeah,
this guy was an Air Force Master Sergeant.
that's right.
Not exactly the image that comes to mind.
At the first thing you think of
Right.
when you see him on the canvas.
But it's true. And the sources even mention how he was a medical records technician
Mm-hmm.
in the Air Force,
Uh-huh.
which is pretty far from the tranquil world
Yeah.
of painting landscapes.
Quite a contrast.
Look-
But the interesting thing is, it's like he almost channeled that military discipline into his art in a way, you know?
Interesting.
Like there's a structure
Yeah.
and order, even in the creativity,
Right.
which maybe isn't what you'd expect.
Yeah, almost like he took that regimented background and flipped it,
Yeah.
turned it into something calming
Uh-huh.
and expressive.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that you wouldn't expect, the biographies both mention that he actually hated
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
that perm.
He hated the perm.
Apparently, it was just a cost-saving measure
Right back in the day.
early on when he was
When
first
he was starting out. Yeah.
getting started, and it kind of just
That's
stuck
the brand.
as part of the
The
brand.
look, the Bob Ross look.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
It's amazing how those things happen, right?
Yeah.
Like something as simple as a hairstyle
Yeah.
becomes so iconic.
It makes you wonder if he ever felt trapped by it,
Right.
Especially since he didn't.
Didn't even like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you think about
It does.
how much of our public image is intentional and how much is just, well, circumstance.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But let's move on to Alaska,
Okay.
because both of the sources
Yeah.
emphasize how profoundly his time there influenced his painting style. You can really
Oh, sure.
see it
Yeah.
in those snowy mountains,
Uh-huh.
the cabin scenes.
Yeah, like those classic Bob Ross images
Right.
right out of Alaska.
What's interesting, though, is that his paintings
Yeah.
rarely feature people.
That's true.
It's almost as if he saw Alaska
Mm.
and nature in general as this pristine
Yeah.
world that was separate
Right.
from the busyness of human life.
Like a retreat.
What do you think when you look at his work? Do you get that same feeling?
I think so.
Like
Like a sense of escape,
a sense of peace?
maybe even a touch of solitude.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way before.
Yeah.
But now that you mention it,
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, it's like he's inviting us
Yeah.
into this world where
Mhm.
everything is calm and beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
And that ties into something else that the sources point out.
Okay.
His time in Alaska wasn't just about the scenery.
Right.
It was about the feeling
Mm.
of solitude,
The vastness.
the vastness of nature. Yeah. And maybe even a sense of awe,
Okay.
Like looking at something so much bigger
Right.
than himself.
It's like he absorbed all that
Totally.
and then poured it
And it comes out
into these paintings.
onto the canvas.
So even though there aren't any people in most of his work,
Right.
there's still this undeniable human element to
Yeah.
it, you know?
Yeah, a sense of somebody who really appreciated the beauty and the tranquility of
Yeah.
nature.
Okay, so that brings us to his famous painting technique,
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about the technique.
which of course we have to talk about.
Of course.
Happy little accidents.
Right, a happy little accident.
Brilliant.
But it's more than just a
Yeah, it's more than a catchy phrase.
catchy phrase.
Right. The wet-on-wet technique itself is fascinating.
So it's not just about
No.
making mistakes and calling them happy.
Well, there's an element of that,
Okay.
right? Like embracing the imperfection.
Right.
But the wet-on-wet technique
Right. Okay.
takes a lot of skill
Okay.
and control.
Interesting.
Like, he makes it look easy.
Right.
But there's a lot going on there.
And it was perfect for television.
Yeah.
because
Well, fast.
it's so fast.
Okay.
Did you know that he actually painted 3 versions of each piece?
Wait, 3 versions?
3 versions.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he would have one that was pre-painted that he would use as reference
Okay.
while he was filming,
Uh-huh.
the one that he actually painted on air for the viewers,
Right.
and then a more detailed version that he would use for his instructional books.
Wow. So a whole system.
It was a whole
Yeah.
system, like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, but behind the machine was this deep belief that anyone could paint.
That's what really comes through in the sources. Like,
Yeah.
that's the message.
It wasn't about being the best or having perfect technique.
Nope.
It was about finding joy
Right.
in the
In the process.
creative process
Yeah.
itself, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Made art less intimidating
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
It made it much more accessible.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Not this scary thing.
Just a fun thing to do.
Right. And it was more about the process than the final product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The journey, not the destination.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the business side
Okay.
of Bob Ross, because he did have this whole empire.
He did
You-
paints books classes.
Yeah, even licensing his image.
It's a whole business.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, was he driven
Yeah, that's a good question.
by the business side of things?
Right. Like, what was the motivation?
Or was it always about sharing his love of painting?
Yeah. Was it pure or was
With
it
the world.
a little more complicated?
Yeah,
It-
because the sources kind of paint a complicated picture
I do.
of his legacy, especially after his death.
Yeah, it gets a little messy there,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And we'll get into that
We will.
more in a bit.
It's kind of sad when you read about the legal battles
Right,
over his image and the mystery of where all those paintings ended up.
right.
It just feels at odds with
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile
his whole vibe.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh my.
with the Bob Ross we think we know.
Yeah.
And speaking of kind of conflicting narratives,
Okay.
the sources also touch on his popularity
Yeah.
on platforms like Twitch and Netflix.
It's crazy, right?
I mean, who would have thought
But look at
that this guy, yeah, this guy from the 80s and 90s,
painting back in the 80s and 90s
he,
would find a whole new audience.
with young people.
Yeah, with younger generations.
It's wild.
It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it speaks.
And it speaks to the enduring power
Yeah,
of his message
of his style.
and his style.
I mean, have you heard about the ASMR connection?
Oh, yeah. One
Yeah.
of the sources mentions that.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, the tingly, calming sensation
People get chills that some people experience
when they watch him paint.
from certain sounds and visuals.
Yeah.
Apparently, a lot of people find his voice and his painting style
Super relaxing.
incredibly soothing.
Yeah.
And it's funny you should mention the voice
Oh, yeah.
because one of the sources actually quotes his son, Steve Ross,
Okay.
who explained that Bob intentionally spoke softly
Really?
on the show
Oh.
to create kind of a contrast with his mentor, Bill Alexander,
Right. Bill Alexander was much more,
who had a more boisterous
yeah, like in your face.
personality.
That's so interesting. It's like
Yeah.
he was really thinking about that.
Yeah.
You know, crafting the whole experience.
It shows how even these small, seemingly insignificant details
Right. The tone of voice.
can contribute to a larger effect.
Totally.
But I think his popularity goes
Yeah.
beyond just the ASMR aspect.
For sure.
Don't you think there's something about his philosophy,
Yeah.
his message of finding joy in creativity,
Mhm.
embracing imperfection,
Like that really resonates.
that really resonates in today's world,
Especially today.
in a world that's constantly pushing us
Right.
to be more productive,
To achieve more.
achieve more.
Yeah, be perfect.
Ross's approach feels like a breath of fresh air.
It is.
It's a reminder to slow down,
Yeah.
enjoy the process.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't be afraid to
Yeah.
make mistakes.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to the idea of accessibility.
Right.
The wet-on-wet technique isn't just fast.
Right.
It's also really forgiving.
You can blend, you can adjust.
Right.
You can turn those happy accidents
You can turn those happy accidents into something beautiful.
into something beautiful. Exactly.
So he would say it's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
It's okay to experiment. Just have fun with it.
It's about the joy,
Yeah.
not the outcome.
Speaking of his work, though,
Okay.
I was really curious about what
I have
happened
a good question.
to all those paintings that he created on The Joy of Painting.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about over 1,000
A lot of paintings.
works of art.
Where'd they all go?
Where did they all go?
Right.
And one of the sources
Yeah.
actually references an investigation
Oh, wow.
by the New York Times
Okay.
that revealed that the Kowalskis,
The Kowalskis.
who own Bob Ross Inc.,
Right.
claim to still have all the paintings.
They do.
So they're all accounted for.
Well, kind of. There are some concerns about how they're storing them and preserving them.
Right, like are they being properly taken care of?
Yeah, like, will anyone ever get to see them?
That's a shame.
It is kind of.
You'd think that they'd want to share those paintings
You'd think.
with the world.
Right. Especially given his whole philosophy.
Especially given his philosophy.
And making art accessible.
Right.
Doesn't really add up.
But it highlights the complexities
Yeah.
of legacy and ownership.
It's complicated.
Especially when it comes to art and commerce.
Exactly.
You have this artist who wanted to democratize art.
Yeah.
Bring joy to everyone.
Make for everyone.
And then you have this messy business side.
Yeah.
That feels at odds with his vision.
Doesn't quite fit, does it?
It's a real contradiction.
Yeah, it makes you think.
And it makes you think about whether it's even possible for an artist to control their work and their image after they're gone.
It's tough.
Well, look at what happened with those legal battles.
Exactly.
Over his estate.
It all went sideways.
It's almost as if the very thing that he created, this image of peace and gentleness, became a commodity.
A product.
To be fought over.
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad, but it makes me appreciate even more.
Yeah.
Those moments of genuine joy and creativity.
Yeah.
That shine through in his work.
It's still there.
Like, despite all the complications.
Yeah.
That core message of finding happiness in the simple act of painting.
The joy of painting.
Still manages to come through. And that's ultimately what makes Bob Ross so fascinating.
He's a complicated guy.
He's a complex figure.
But in the end...
Full of contradictions.
Yeah. But at his heart...
But at his core, he was an artist.
Yeah.
Who genuinely wanted to...
Share his love of painting.
Share his love of painting with the world.
Exactly.
And he definitely achieved that.
He did.
And his influence...
Continues to this day.
Continues to this day. But before we wrap things up...
Okay.
I wanted to touch on a few specific details from the sources that I found particularly interesting.
Okay.
For instance, did you know that he had quite a fondness for wildlife?
Oh, yeah. He loved animals.
Yeah.
Big time.
Both of the biographies mention how much he loved filming squirrels.
Yeah.
And other animals in his garden.
He was like Snow White.
And apparently he would even take in injured or abandoned creatures.
Oh, that's sweet.
It's no wonder that those little critters often made appearances in his paintings.
Little cameo.
But here's something that really surprised me.
Okay.
One of the sources mentions that he actually dropped out of high school.
What?
In the 9th grade.
No way!
Yeah.
You're kidding?
It's a reminder.
Wow.
That people's paths are rarely straightforward.
For sure.
And that success can come from unexpected places.
Absolutely.
Speaking of unexpected turns,
okay.
Did you come across that anecdote?
About?
Them being invited on stage at the Grand Ole Opry?
Oh, yeah, with Hank Snow?
With Hank Snow.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got a standing ovation.
It's in the second biography.
Didn't he give Hank Snow a painting lesson?
Apparently he got a huge ovation from the audience.
Yeah.
Even though he was a bit nervous at first. And he gave Snow a private painting lesson afterwards.
That's awesome.
It's those little stories that really bring his personality to life.
They do.
And it makes you think about all the other experiences.
Right. All the stuff.
Interactions.
We don't know about.
That shaped him into the person that he became.
Right. And that's what makes these deep dives so great.
Exactly.
Like you get to uncover those little details.
We get to peel back the layers and uncover this richer,
the hidden stuff,
more nuanced understanding of these figures who on the surface might seem very familiar.
Exactly.
And sometimes those hidden depths reveal surprises that really challenge our preconceived notions.
They do.
And speaking of surprises, there was one detail in particular that really struck me. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. You picture Bob Ross, you know, calm,
gentle guy
with a paintbrush.
Right.
But one of the sources mentions that he actually lost part of his left index finger.
I remember reading about that.
In a carpentry accident when he was younger.
Yeah, he was working with his dad.
I don't know about you, but I found that incredibly poignant.
It's like you don't expect that when you think about him.
Like you said, this gentle guy with a paintbrush.
Yeah, and he's got this injury, you know.
And it didn't stop him.
It didn't stop him at all.
From becoming this iconic painter.
Really makes you think.
In a way, it kind of underscores that idea of overcoming obstacles.
Oh, right.
Finding beauty in unexpected places.
Absolutely.
Which seems to be a recurring theme
It does.
In his life.
Throughout his whole story.
I mean, think about it. He was a disciplined military man.
Yeah.
Who embraced softness and creativity.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't crazy about his signature perm.
Right.
But it became a symbol.
But it's iconic.
Of his persona.
Yeah.
And even this physical setback, losing part of his finger.
It's hold him back.
Couldn't derail his passion.
Amazing.
It makes you wonder what other challenges.
Yeah. What else don't we know?
Did he face that we don't know about?
Right, like we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Right. It's a good reminder that we often only see a small part
of
a person's story.
Yeah.
And that the things we perceive as flaws or limitations can sometimes lead to...
Right, they can become strengths.
Unexpected strengths and resilience.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a powerful message in itself.
Yeah.
So if we take a step back...
Okay.
And look at everything we've uncovered in these Bob Ross biographies, what do you think is the biggest takeaway?
That's a good question.
What can we learn?
Yeah, what can we learn?
From this man who, as we've discovered, was so much more than just happy little trees.
I think it's interesting because on the surface, his message seems so simple, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can paint.
Right.
Embrace the joy of creation.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of mistakes.
Right.
But when you think about his life, all the contradictions, the challenges he faced, it adds a whole other level to it.
It adds a layer of depth to that message.
Totally.
It's not just about painting.
Right.
It's about approaching life.
Yeah, your whole approach to life.
With that same kind of openness and acceptance.
Be open to things.
Finding the beauty in unexpected places.
Yeah.
Being willing to experiment.
Try new things.
And not being afraid to show your authentic self.
Yeah, be yourself.
Even if it's not perfect.
Exactly.
And I think that message of inclusivity, of welcoming everyone to the table.
Yeah, there's room for everybody.
Really resonates today.
It does.
Ross made art approachable.
Yeah.
He demystified the creative process.
Took the scariness out of it.
And in doing so, he empowered
so many people.
Countless people.
To just create.
And express themselves.
Yeah.
It's like he reminded us that art.
Yeah.
Isn't this elite exclusive thing?
Right. It's not just for the fancy galleries.
It's something that everyone can experience and enjoy.
Absolutely.
Regardless of skill level.
Doesn't matter if you're good or bad.
Or back.
Just do it.
And that's a legacy that extends far beyond.
Yeah.
Those happy little trees.
Way beyond.
He showed us that creativity.
Yeah.
Can be a source of joy. Peace.
Connection.
And connection. And that's a message.
It is.
Worth holding on to.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thanks.
And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah, I think so too.
So to our listeners out there.
Yeah.
I encourage you to explore these sources.
Check them out.
Further dig a little deeper into the life and work of Bob Ross. See what resonates with you.
Yeah, what speaks to you.
Maybe you'll find inspiration in his unconventional path.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll discover a new appreciation for his art.
Could happen.
Or maybe you'll just be reminded of the power of creativity and the importance of embracing
those happy accidents.
Those happy accidents along the way.
Exactly.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep diving deep.
And keep diving deep.